Nick. This is Paul Watkins here. I enjoy your meth. I like the tape. That was good. I was going to make a tape when I first answered your letter, but I didn't have my tape deck there, so I wound up scribbling out pages of stuff. Anyway, I guess I just got done listening to the tape. I got it this morning, and I'm generally impressed. My initial impressions are very good. I feel really relaxed about this. And I guess I'd first of all like to explain why the hostile tone in my letter. First of all, Brooks hadn't mentioned your name. I remember a couple of years ago, last time I saw him, and the last time I saw him, there was some real weirdness, all buttered over with sweetness. I'll perhaps get into that. Anyway, he'd mentioned your name, and so I got the impression from the letter that you weren't being straight with me, or that you were somehow in cahoots with him. And at this time, I'm especially extra sensitive about this and the whole CM thing, because there seems to be a resurgence in interest in the whole Manson thing at this time. And I don't know why, but I know what I have theories about it. His book, probably, and some of the stuff that's been going on in the media, some TV shows and interviews and stuff. This probably has something to do with it, but also I think there is sort of a resurgence of the 60s in general. And but whatever, on my end, what I'm getting is more inquiries from different people, occasionally penetrating my screen of privacy that I have. I know it doesn't seem like I really have much of a screen of privacy, since in my book there was at the back of the book there was a reference to where I live. So Paul now lives in Tacoma, California, although the book was out 10 years ago. Anyway, whoever read it could find Tacoma on the map and say, oh, that's where he lives, in the Death Valley area. That was not written by me. That was a little footnote that was put on there by the publisher, and I really didn't like that. It really made me mad, because I saw it as a violation of my privacy, and I went through writing the whole book without mentioning where I was. Very little reference to Tacoma and Shoshone. I thought I did a pretty good job of maintaining my privacy in the book, and then they turned right around and published that in the book. That was one of the problems that I had with that publishing company. At this time, I bought the publishing rights back from the publishing company, and I have those again in the copyrights, of course. So, why I was so sensitive, I feel like I should explain a little bit, is that some of these people that have, usually when they tenaciously find out how to get a hold of me, they are just normally a young person who was born 20 years ago and has this fascination for the whole case, the whole scene, the whole Manson scene, and what it symbolizes, and oftentimes they're quite lost and looking for direction. There, I hope we fixed that. I'm having a little trouble with my tape deck here. Anyway, oftentimes they're lost, looking for direction, and I'm really not in the business of counseling people, although I do sometimes try a little bit. and you can't help it. Most of the time, you can't help it. You see, when I run into somebody who's suicidal or whatever, and they're usually quite innocent, and assassination's not going to take them anywhere dangerous. A lot of times they've written Charlie, and once they've got a letter through to me, I sometimes answer them, or if they get a phone call or something through, I have to talk to them, and usually trying to cool them out. Anyway, there's just been more of that lately. And there's been this Dominique. Now, you said in your letter that there was a Dominic, and then in your tape you described it was a male. In your letter you also said it was a he, and there was another source of hostility on my part, because it seemed like there was something weird going on, because I've got a young woman, a 19-year-old woman named Dominique, who's been calling me, who got my address, and she says she's writing a definitive account of the Manson story and where the Manson people are, and it turned out that she's got a dialogue going with Kitty Lutzinger and some other ex-Manson family members that probably aren't well, and they probably have a pipeline to Charlie, or a dialogue going with Bobby Beausoleil or something, and it disturbs me quite a bit when something like that happens. Now, in this case of Dominique, this young woman, this has developed real fast, even since I got your letter last week. That I've called her, she's called me several times, and the district attorney, matter of fact, called me. Kitty Lutzinger, who's one of the young women who was involved in the Manson thing, she contacted the district attorney and was pumping him for information, misrepresented herself, saying that she was working with me on this book. And this person, Dominique, and somebody named Dominique has been calling the district attorney, and he smelled a rat or something, so he called me. Anyway, so I talked to this woman, Dominique, this morning. Apparently, the young woman, Dominique, I have to believe her at this point. She seems to be a 19-year-old woman, a friend of Sharon Tate's mom, and she's sort of grew up around this stuff, talked about it over the dinner table and whatnot. Now she wanted to sort of write about it in the sense of, well, it wasn't necessarily a bloodthirsty cult. It was a bunch of young people that were sucked in by this man and influenced to do what they did. I didn't understand how she expected to get the ear of a publisher, how she expected the public to accept a book like that. But anyway, it looked like when she got a hold of Kitty Lutzinger, she was being manipulated by Kitty. Once she realized this, she started engaging in some damage control here. And also, apparently, she says that her friend Dominic, the young man, she went to school with him, and that she's been talking with him about this thing. And so that incongruity seems to be rectified at this time. According to what she told me this morning on the phone, that there's a Dominic and there's a Dominique, and they are friends and they've been collaborating. But she also claims that she didn't give Dominic my address, and that she got my address from Kitty Lutzinger. Well, I know where Kitty Lutzinger got it. She went through the district attorney and the ex-district attorney and the ex-district attorney's wife, and a long series of phone calls to the local police and the local real estate people, and finally she got my number. Got my mailing address, good singer. And it's a tangled, kind of a tangled mess. We haven't really got to the bottom of it yet. There is the possibility of some danger there, and so it was only natural for me to suspect that you were part of that, or an unwitting dupe in this plot, whatever it might be. But I'm convinced after listening to your tape and reading your letters and everything that you are who you say you are, and I appreciate that. I mostly appreciate your general tone of voice and your sincerity comes across. So I feel like responding in kind. I do enjoy corresponding to a certain degree, especially when someone's really interested in something, especially if you're interested in my music. That's nice. That's really nice. I do have some nice recordings. Not a lot of them are prepared commercially, like you said. I don't sell tapes, and I've got quite a library of stuff that I did then. A lot of it's not real high quality studio stuff. Some of it is, but it's not all transcribed onto cassettes. I don't even have one extra cassette of it that I can send you. I would, but I'll get some together, or we could get together and you could make some recordings of it. We've got to wade through volumes of reel-to-reels to find some decent material. Sometimes it's just practice sessions that go on and on. Sometimes they're intended to be masters, and they're quite clean. Anyway, about the music, yes, I've got some good music. You'd probably be interested in it. I'm not actively doing music right now. Haven't been for a while, for a few years. I probably will again. I do write some songs, and I play music with David Wells every once in a while. David and I have remained good friends. I don't know if you met David, but really talented guy. Did a lot of work on Brooks and Jane's music, I guess you could say. He thought it was his too. But anyway, there's some nice stuff there. Some of it I really like. Some of the old stuff with me and Brooks playing was really nice. And there was a lot of harmony there. And I think you can appreciate, then I've explained why there was this suspicion on my part that you were up to some sort of no good or something. I hope you can understand that, and I appreciate that you didn't resent my suspecting you. I appreciate that a lot. I suppose, let's see, what would you be interested in? The music is, music was a hard thing for me. I suppose that's the reason why I haven't played it in a few years. It was difficult, first of all, as a horn player, playing flute and sax, and singing and dancing. When you play horns and sing, you have to have an accompanist. I've always had this ever since I was a little kid. I've worked with groups or orchestras. You have to have an accompanist. And I worked with Brooks for 7 years or 8 years or something very intensely all the time. We were religiously married to our music. Catch my drift. That's where the weirdness is as well. The music was more than just playing music. It took on missionary zeal and took on epic proportions of saving the world and humanity. This gets to be a bit much. It's also difficult to find an accompanist when you're doing a lot of original material and you're keeping it in your head and you're not writing the material down. Now, I do write music and read music, but Brooks did not. And the material was always in his head, and it put Brooks in a position of power musically. If he wanted to play a song, we would play it. If he didn't want to play a song, we didn't play it. And there was always weirdness. There was always weirdness. It may look like, and it does look like musically, we were very harmonious musically, but there was a competitiveness as well as the desire to be harmonious. There was always a competition that fueled it. And it was the same way with Manson. It was the same way playing music with Manson. It was fever pitch. You had to be perfect. You had to anticipate the spontaneousness. You had to really be on your toes. There was a lot of ad-libbing. A lot of those ideas we brought to our music. And a lot of songs were written that way, or just ad-libbed. I was proud of that. I ad-libbed all night sometimes when we didn't have the material to cover what was needed in a given gig. Sometimes we just make it up. It wasn't always really good, but you'd have to give us an A for effort anyway when you were watching. And only if we would have had this almost religious zeal to go after the music would we have endured such things, would we have even tried it. There was always that. And there was Crockett's ideas. Crockett was a part of it, even though we still use some of the ideas that we were using from the Manson days about spontaneity, ad-libbing, and about not sticking to a particular beat, which is difficult with music. Charlie had this big thing about, there was a general prejudice against written music that followed normal time, just like 1, 2, 3, 4. It would always throw in a little something to throw you off, and some syncopated something. And Crockett reinforced that idea, actually, because he didn't know anything about music, really. And he reinforced that idea by saying that conscious music didn't contain that necessarily. The only thing is, it's very difficult to make music, period, without having timing that is reliable and rhythmic. You could change it very often, but then you'd set up another rhythmic pattern, and there was always that anxiety, or, oh no, am I doing conscious music, or is this getting mechanical? And there were a lot of anxieties involved in making music in that scene, and it was destined to fall apart, and it probably still is destined to not be commercially acceptable, no matter how good it gets, because as long as you're dealing with a lot of the ideas that keep it from becoming commercially acceptable, that it never will be. Not that people wouldn't like it, it's just that it's difficult to be managed when you're unmanageable, when you're wanting to do everything yourself and you know what's best for you all the time. When you're operating from this godlike position, it's difficult for anybody to manage you. In order to be commercially successful, you've got to have at least one manager. And there's always a trouble with the group, especially Brooks, to maintain control. Now I understand this to be a product of insecurity. I didn't at the time. I was always struggling along, and there was a lot of fighting going on. It never was really smooth with me and Brooks personally. There was a lot of animosity, I think most of it on his part, because it went back into the Manson family when I enjoyed a position that had a lot of advantages and power, I guess you can say, whereas Brooks wasn't able to function in a lot of cases, so therefore he was seen as sort of a hanger-on who couldn't do very much, couldn't function sexually or musically, or wasn't ever very assertive about anything, and generally screwed up. So as he began to get more and more rehabilitated and more power, he sort of took it out on me. And this came out many times, many ways. And just knowing that that's true doesn't make it go away. We understood this, but it didn't quit. It would oftentimes wind up sabotaging record deals that we were into. It got to be sadder and sadder. There was something wrong. So I eventually just pulled away. I guess I got fired, I suppose you could say. Brooks just decided one day that he didn't need me anymore, so him and Jane just took off, went in their own direction. I went on for a while with David Wells and some other guys, and I had a lot of work to do on myself at that time, which sort of brings me to now. I guess it'd be nice to tell you about my life now, where I am now. I could sense the concern in your voice about me having cancer. That disturbed you, and it seemed like an uncomfortable subject to you. It really isn't uncomfortable. I'm sorry if it's uncomfortable to you, but it really isn't an uncomfortable subject for me at this point, because I'm in a victorious position. I've got good remission going, apparently, from all the tests. I do extensive tests at UCLA. I go down there every few months. I did get a tumor on my neck almost 3 years ago, and it grew and grew, and I went through all kinds of stuff. I first went to Crockett, although I hadn't been working with him in a few years. I went to him because he was one of the people that I still very much trusted. I was still operating with a lot of those programs that I had gotten in the years that I worked with him, which probably led to getting the cancer in the first place, but we can get into that another time. It's just that I want to say it's not an uncomfortable subject, getting cancer. The tumor on my neck made me go into crisis situation, and crisis in the Chinese language has two characters, actually. One of the characters is the same character for opportunity, and in this case the cancer served me very well. It was as though I got grabbed a hold of by the neck. Like God grabbed me by the neck and said, you want to look at your life and get it back in the productive mode? You want to really live it, or you want to just rape, pillage, and plunder? Not that I was out raping, pillaging, and plundering, but in a sense, yes, there is that element. There's the element of subjugating the women in my life. There's the element of not being able to be happy, of not being able to be happy having children. And so I was, the cancer gave me the, I guess you could say, motivation, the opportunity to really reassess my life, and to continually reassess my life, since you don't really get rid of cancer, they say. At least in my case, they say they wouldn't say I was cured until I remain in remission for another 5 to 7 years. But in the years of chemotherapy and radiation therapy and all the morbid tests and things that go on there, there was a lot of opportunity to look at different things, and in that drama, it turned out to a really happy ending. I'm enjoying my life more than ever. I lived here in this little town in the desert. I live outside of town, have an old homestead with water and trees, and have two wonderful children, little girls, 3 and 4, Claire and Lise. Claire's the 4-year-old. Lise is the 3-year-old. They're just delightful. A wonderful wife. I'm very much in love with Martha. And that's truly a blessing. It's truly wonderful. Not that it's all, I say, daisies and sunbeams or whatever, but it is pretty much of the time, and getting better all the time. I have a really good chance of having a really wonderful life at this point. And that's the best. That's the best part of the story. Well, I'm having a really wonderful life, and there's a very good chance that it will get better and go on for quite a while. So really don't be sad for me. I appreciate your prayers. I do. I would appreciate your prayers. Mostly in the terms of thank yous to life itself for being so wonderful. And which brings us back again to the danger in the Crockett type situation, and the danger with Crockett, and what I see that Brooks is most probably still suffering from, is when you define life, and you claim to be able to define life and explain all of life, it just gets to the point where there's no mystery in life, and you're stuck with your definition. And life doesn't lend itself to being easily defined. And there's always more. There's always more to learn. There definitely is mystery and magic, like you said. And this is a matter of fact. It isn't a voodoo, spooky thing like hubba hubba occultism, where we're all like a bunch of little kids telling each other scary stories about the supernatural. It is in fact wonderful and wide thing. Just keep learning more and more about it, and I suppose that I share that with you, that I'm an avid lover of life. I suppose that's what's got me into so much trouble. But I'm not in trouble now, and that's the good part. I guess you'd be happy to hear that. I did want to say another bit about the Dominic, not the Dominique, but the Dominic, the young man. You said you'd appreciate that if I didn't give your address to different people. Well, I haven't, but I had mentioned to the Dominique, the young woman, in trying to find out who this Dominic was after you told me that there was such a person, that Dominic had gone and met you, and that's how you had got my address, and I was wondering if she had given my address to him. She said she did not, which raises the specter that he got the address from somebody else, so there's still a weird mystery there. But nonetheless, you're not a suspect, but in any case, you'll probably get some repercussions from it, and you'll probably come back, you'll probably talk to him, and I think at this point we should just engage in damage control, or see to it that no more violations of privacy take place, or this kind of thing. I enjoy having this dialogue. You strike me as being somebody who's truly interested, and of course I'm more than flattered that you're interested in my art. But at this point, my art is living itself. I write a little paper here. My wife and I publish a local paper. I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce here. I'm very excited about that. And I'm learning a whole lot about these kind of things. I'm involved in economic development. I'm very involved with the community as far as its evolving goes. And this seems to be something that I'm blessed with, is this ability to be some sort of a leader or something. I've dealt with that ever since I was really young. I'm beginning to get a handle on it, what it means to be in a position of responsibility on several dynamics, several levels, that is, and have some influence in making life better for myself and my community. I'm venting my evangelical save the world thing now on a little more local level, making my life better and making the life of those around me better if I can. And then I think I'm dealing from a much saner perspective than I ever have in my life. And I would have to say a lot of that is thanks to the cancer. And it's also thanks to my ability to have been able to rise to the occasion and see it as an opportunity for growth. And this ugly thing that I talked to you about, where Crockett is charging for counseling, is true, truer than you'd like to know about. He's been doing it now for a few years, and there's a lot of ugly stories, really sad stories of people that have been not helped, at least, and who are suffering, and who lost their property and resort a lot of their money to Crockett and Sylvee. And it paints a really ugly picture. I didn't really start seeing it until in the last couple of years when I was induced to look at it. I'm quite sure he's still up to it unless something really heavy has come down. Because I know that in cases like this, that you've got a lot invested in your own delusions of grandeur, that it takes something of crisis proportions to get you to question your program. So in that case, I guess I'm a little worried about Brooks, because it's almost for sure that he's under Crockett's influence in the last year or something. They all went up to Washington. Crockett and Sylvee had to listen to somebody that said there was going to be a big earthquake and some apocalypse happen. And so they moved to Washington State, and they sort of called in all their people to go with them. I mostly see this that in a way, I see it like this: that Crockett hasn't been able to be successful at $100 an hour. They're just, the mixed up people haven't been flocking to him in droves while he was up there in Sunnyvale. And they weren't really able to make a lot of money. So he's got to do something in his old age to take care of himself. So he's sort of pulling back and pulling the people that are really hooked in with him, pulling them to him, and they're doing whatever they're doing. But I do believe that Brooks probably won't be able to be successful commercially as long as he's dealing with the programs that he's dealing with. And these things do not go away easily because they're just very, very strong. And the more you get invested in these type of programs or modes of living, or ways of thinking, or the general mindset, the more you get invested in them, the harder they are to question, the more they get taken as fact. And it gets to be a deep pit. But, I'm certainly not going to condemn them or anything. I think it's kind of sad. It's also one of the symptoms of it, like I pointed out, is the denial that goes on as far as my part in making the music and my part in the creation of Desert Sun goes. That general denial can easily be explained because since I have the more independent, I suppose you could call it, stance now, my life is more independent. I don't have something going with Crockett. I don't run to him all the time. As a matter of fact, I see him as quite destructive. For example, he would have kept me there with this tumor growing on my neck, paying him $100 a session, telling me to think the tumor away, or he told me to get rid of my wife because she was causing it, or get rid of my children because they were causing it, divorce myself from my life, and come live near him and keep paying $100 a session until I was cured. I probably would have died. Chances are very good that I would have died had I not gone and gotten some help. As it turns out, the type of cancer that I had, Hodgkin's disease, is quite curable. It has a very high cure rate. And it really, as cancers go, is not a bad one to get. And I did very well. I don't put all of the credit with the doctors and the chemotherapy and radiation therapy, but it certainly helped. It certainly did put the cancer in remission, along with my turning my thinking around and continuing to take inventory of where I'm coming from. There's nothing wrong with this. It's very therapeutic to say, who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? There's nothing wrong with not knowing who you are and just sort of being who you are, operating from a more honest perspective, I would call it. Taking it one day at a time and living with instincts that are rehabilitated and that are not guided by programs, but are more guided from moment to moment. Anyway, I'm going on and on philosophizing here, but I suppose you'd be interested in it because this is my art at this time. And though I still have a flute, I still play flute. I'm a little rusty on the sax because I don't have a group to practice with, but my talent is still there. I do write a lot more. I write songs and I write articles and things, and we'll be doing more of that. I'm coming out of the closet as far as hiding, not being publicly visible. Like I said, I publish a paper. I'm president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I interact with the community quite a bit. I'm not doing lectures and drug rehabilitation seminars and these type of things associated with the Manson thing. I'm not doing anything associated with the Manson story. And matter of fact, is mostly why I'm doing this tape is because I do believe that, as you say, you're more attracted to the artist and the art and the persons themselves. I can certainly understand that. And I don't feel like you're fueling your fantasies of having a harem or having this power that Manson supposedly had. Anyway, I'm going on and on here. I guess I've got room on the tape, but I'm kind of enjoying it. And I would say it's a pleasure meeting you. I would be open to meeting you in person. And maybe the easiest way for you to get some of my music would be to record it here. And I'm not really set up for that. So I'll sign off for now. I've got something to do.